everybody. I am so delighted to be here with my colleagues Barbara and Joni Mayville and Danielle Calvin. And I'm also really excited for all of you to hear from our guest tonight, Holly. So we're just going to jump right in. And here's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to talk about I'll just kind of provide a brief overview of who we are and what do we mean by our literacy ecosystem. And then Joni will be taking you through our Phonics Core Program, our decodable duos, our readables, just really exciting suite of products. And then Holly will come on and talk to us about her success story at Parsons Elementary in Decatur Public Schools. So lots to do tonight. Again, we're so delighted that you're here. So if any of you are new to 95% Group, we are a unique and special company, and we base all of our work on these foundational principles. First, we believe that all children deserve a chance to learn to read. And I know that you share that belief, or you would not be doing the work that you're doing. And we are so proud to support you in that work, and also to thank you for the work that you do every day. Our purpose is to unlock the power of literacy for every child. And we do this by building on the science to empower teachers and leaders and all educators by supplying knowledge and resources and support they need to transform developing readers. We are a leading provider of high quality, proven literacy resources, which align with our literacy ecosystem. Now, what is a literacy ecosystem, you might be asking? Well, it's a cohesive suite of resources that is both evidence-aligned and evidence-based. I'm going to get to both of those in a minute. And instruction is data-driven, aligned, and consistent across tiers of instruction. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit. And let's start with that second bullet about alignment and consistency. So this infographic represents our suite of leading products in different tiers of instruction. You'll note that at the bottom, we see our Tier 1 solution, Phonics Core Program, which is the focus of our webinar tonight. In Tier 2, we offer our highly effective literacy intervention system, which is a digital platform for assessment, grouping, and instruction tied to our phonics lesson library. And Tier 3 is 95 Wrap, a very unique resource that is really for small, intensive intervention groups. All of these resources are aligned in pedagogy and practice, aligned with a common scope and sequence of skills, which Joni will share with you tonight, and aligned across the principles of the science of reading. So as we move through those tiers, our students are afforded additive, not replacement instruction. Additive instruction with more time, intensity, and focus, but with that same skills backbone throughout. And you'll notice from this infographic that all of this is underscored by our professional learning, including top 10 tools. And I'll explain a little bit more about our professional learning later on in the webinar. So that's what we mean by aligned and consistent. So what about evidence-aligned and evidence-based? So just real quickly, when we talk about evidence alignment, we're talking about alignment with that body of research called the science of reading. We have this immense body of research that really helps guide what we do, those instructional moves we make every day. And you're going to see this in the Phonics Core Program, that explicit instruction with that gradual release. I do, we do, you do. The cumulative review for that consolidation of learning. That sequential instruction across that hierarchy of a skills backbone from least complex to most complex. Lots of active engagement. The foundational skills do not live on their own. They only come to life when we apply those skills in reading and writing, and then knowing what to do instructionally by using the data. So that's that coherence and alignment that I mentioned earlier. That's evidence aligned. How about evidence based? Well, I'm very proud of the fact that we as a company are committed to robust third-party efficacy studies that show that our resources work in real classrooms with real teachers and real students. And I will say that our portfolio of research studies is really unparalleled in the publishing world. Now, some of you might know this person featured here. This is Emily Hanford. She's a reporter for American Public Media. And over the past few years, she's really focused on looking at reading instruction across the country. And her reporting concluded that most programs are not studied for efficacy because most publishers aren't willing to put in the time and the expense required to do so. 95% Group is unique and different because, as I said, we're really proud of our collection of efficacy studies, which you can access here. with this QR code. So again, brief background on our 195 literacy ecosystem and what makes us distinctive and special. So now without further ado, I want to turn over to my colleague, Joni Mayville.
I'm Joni Mayville, and I'm the Senior Director of Product Development in 95% Group. And this evening, I will be sharing with you a quick overview of our K-5 95 Phonics Core Program. This offers explicit instruction that's aimed at building essential phonics skills and fostering strong readers from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. Independent research, as Laura had mentioned, has confirmed the effectiveness of the 95 Phonics Core Program, where it meets the highest level 1 standards established by the Every Student Succeeds Act, otherwise known as ESSA. And as Laura mentioned, our commitment to this rigorous efficacy study ensures that our products are proven effective in real classrooms with real teachers and across diverse populations. We know that your time is limited, so we want to ensure that the products that we're placing into your hands are going to be the most effective. So our 95 Phonics Core Program, what exactly is this? Well, it is a K-5 Tier 1 phonics program that's designed to be taught for 30 minutes, and it's embedded into your already existing ELA block and can complement any existing curriculum that you currently are working with. The PCP, as you will hear me call it throughout the program, we love our acronyms, and I often forget when I'm saying PCP, that means our Phonics Core Program. So if you hear me say that, it's synonymous with 95 Phonics Core Program. It delivers explicit phonics and word study instruction that's based on the science of reading. It has proven effective in addressing skill gaps and helping students achieve grade level proficiency. All the programs from 95% Group share the same instructional attributes, and these key features are consistent lesson structures that include a gradual release model of responsibility and established routines. The consistency that these routines and language provide helps students focus on the actual learning of the skill rather than adjusting to new methods as they progress through the grades and instructional tiers. So not only is it the consistency occurs vertically through the grade levels, it also is consistent across all tiers of instruction, which we believe is super important when you invest in an ecosystem to address all needs at all tiers. So I'm going to demonstrate how each grade level builds upon the previous one to create a strong foundation for confident readers. And additionally, the PCP is supported by a new companion resource for K-5 classrooms. It's the 95 decodable duos and the 95 readables, which are decodable book series. The decodable duos are individual books meant for kindergartners and first graders. And the 95 readables, which are just now available and starting to ship, are chapter books that are decodable to help students feel confident with their reading. So on this slide, you'll see our 95 phonics continuum, which outlines the critical skills targeted at each grade level. As you move from left to right, you can see how the skills increase in complexity. I'd like to highlight the links that are formed at the top of the headers. There's links that almost look like chain links at the top of each column. These links represent the connection between the skills taught at each grade level. For example, the skills introduced in first grade are reviewed at the start of second grade and are continuously reinforced in the following years. This cumulative approach helps strengthen students' skills and helps minimize the need for intervention as they go up into the grade levels. So next, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the critical skills taught at each grade level. And they're highlighted here, but before moving to the next slide, I'm going to pause to go ahead and let you take a look at this continuum of skills to see how the skills are different, how they change from grade level to grade level, and how they build in complexity. So I'm just going to pause here, and you can also find this graphic on our website as well. As you can see, we know that research indicates that strong phonemic awareness is essential for future reading success. So as a result, you'll notice that phonemic awareness is a similar skill that is attached at the very top of the columns for kindergarten through third grade. And then the columns on the continuum that represent these columns represent just a snapshot of what you will see on our scope and sequence. So I invite you to go ahead and visit the resource center that Barb will drop into the chat, and you will be able to retrieve a complete full scope and sequence of each grade level, so you can look in depth at what is exactly taught at each level. So I'm going to begin by looking at kindergarten and first grade to help you kind of see and help you compare as the grade levels progress. I'm going to present these in pairs. So of course, I'm starting with kindergarten and first grade. These two grades are the foundation for developing accurate readers as they lay the foundation for literacy through automaticity of letter sound connections and the ability to read words. The routines used in the PCP at these early grade levels ensure that all students have the opportunity to succeed in achieving these foundational goals. So I'm going to pause here again, just for you to focus on grade K and grade 1 skills and see where there might be some overlap and similarity and progression. So I'm going to begin with kindergarten. There are 25 lessons with a strong emphasis on the phonological and phonemic awareness, as well as letter sound correspondences. In the PCP, letters and their corresponding sounds are taught in a very strategic sequence. We're prioritizing the high utility letters first. This strategy will maximize the opportunities for the application and repeated practice of newly acquired skills and meaningful tasks such as word reading and writing. And then moving on to grade 1, there are 30 lessons that are included in the first grade program, and the reading really begins to accelerate. So students begin with a quick review at the beginning of the year for letter sound correspondences, hence the links at the top. There always is that review component to begin each school year. And then they begin to progress towards learning what a closed syllable is. They work with CVC and VC words in kindergarten, but they aren't taught what is that pattern and why does that make a short vowel sound. In first grade, they really dive into the fact that a closed syllable is one vowel letter followed by one or more consonants. And because it is a closed syllable, that vowel sound is going to be pronounced with a short sound. So we start to give the syllable types names. We give them gestures. So they then begin to learn, okay, I've got a closed syllable. I'm going to add blends and consonant digraphs to this. And as we know, or maybe I'm telling you for the first time, that closed syllables is a significant skill for students to acquire in those early years, because as we know, closed syllables make up nearly 50% of the English language. So that is rather significant in their reading success. So thanks to the strong foundation they do get in kindergarten, students can transition into reading simple decodable text very early in the year. They'll come with the letter sound correspondence solidified. It will, using that kindergarten PCP, will allow them to jump right into reading short decodable passages and stories. Again, if you want to see the kindergarten and first grade scope and sequences in more detail, please feel free to visit the Resource Center. Now I'm going to dig into a couple routines that are very instrumental in the effectiveness of the PCP. The first routine that I'd like to share with you is the sound spelling mapping routine with chips. So each student will receive in their student kit colored chips that represent sounds in a word. They're color coded. Blue standing for consonant sounds, red for short vowel, and so on, orange for consonant digraphs, and the students pick up on these very easily. So they will have these chips, they will receive a mat that looks similar to what's on the screen, and then students will work through building words and continue to use sound chips as well as tying those phonemes, the graphemes to the phonemes. So this routine helps students link those sounds to letters, and it also supports that orthographic mapping process, which embeds the word patterns into students' long-term memory. So you can see the routine here. The teacher will dictate a word. The students repeat and finger stretch all the sounds they hear in the word. They count and mark the boxes and place colored chips into the corresponding boxes. So they would pull down a blue chip for the sound t, a red chip for a blue chip for p. And once they've done that, then they will go back and they will connect those graphemes with the appropriate phonemes. So nation really helps solidify the phonemic awareness piece as well as those letter sound correspondences. And of course, they will follow that by blending the sounds together. We know that segmenting and blending are such a critical piece of their reading development. So I'm going to share one more routine before I stop for questions, but this routine actually is very popular in all of our grade levels. It's called transfer to text. It really is a key component to being able to scaffold that application of a skill into text. So we take it slow. To build up that confidence so students can then read a passage or a piece of text and feel confident and independent in their reading. So it's initially what the students will do on their first exposure of a passage is they will highlight the pattern words in the text. You can see this in the example to the right with Chip and Chad. Once they have highlighted the pattern words, then on the next exposure to the passage, not at the same time, but on the next exposure, possibly the next day, they will then read those highlighted words. So not the passage at this time, they're just reading those highlighted pattern words. In this case, the pattern was this consonant digraph CH and SH. Then once they've done that, on the third exposure to the text, they will actually read a portion of the text. It may not be the whole text, but then they're really starting to feel confident and build that accuracy with not only the pattern words that they've learned, but any previously taught pattern words as well as high frequency words that they've taught. This is a really great way to culminate all of those skills into one practice opportunity. So then after they've read the text, they will reread the entire text more for fluency this time, and then respond either orally or in a written response. Because we know that what we are aiming for is for students to read and understand what they're reading. So we want to make sure they're reading for the purpose of understanding what they read. So you can see here the example of a gradual release model with this particular routine. The I do would be the teacher modeling, underlining words in the title or the first or second sentence, then would highlight or underline the words above the line with the whole class, and then would set them free into a you do to be able to highlight or underline the words underneath that line. So there's that opportunity for the modeling, the we do practice, and then that independent practice opportunity, which is really where we know that kids are going to build that automaticity. And the same is true for each level of this routine. So if you're highlighting, you do the I do, we do. If you're reading the highlighted pattern words, you would still do the I do, we do, you do. And the same goes for reading the text. Really, when they're reading the text to build fluency and then responding, that's when their independence really starts to shine. And that's where we want them to be able to perform independently. So I'm going to pause for a minute just to see. I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to see if there's anything out there in the chat that I can answer.
Joni, we have two questions that I think would be amazing to answer. So
Yeah.
the first one is from Tara, and it's related to that scope and sequence slide. Have
Yes.
you been asked how 95 teaches vowel teams before vowel R, whereas other phonics programs teach vowel R before vowel teams? Can you tell us more about that order of vowels?
Sure. So we have the scope and sequence that has been developed has been a scope and sequence of skills that was developed at the initiation of 95% group, and it carries through all of our products. So for instance, we have a product called the Phonics Lesson Library, which is our intervention program aimed at Tier 2 instruction. And that was really our flagship program that proved so effective, which actually was the reason we jumped into creating the core program, was because we had so many teachers, schools, and districts who were saying we need something as explicit as the Phonics Lesson Library to be taught to our whole class. So we took those same group routines, that same sequence, and we embedded it into our Phonics Core Program. So ultimately, the scope and sequence aligns with all tiers of instruction that we provide. So that way then our assessment assesses those in that order, our intervention teaches it in that order, our core teaches it in that order. And so really getting those VAL teams right up front at the beginning of second grade is really going to help support their reading accuracy, their reading fluency, because we know that those are so much more difficult than, say, the VAL R, which some kids may be able to pick up more implicitly than explicitly. So we're going to kind of count on the fact that we're going to go ahead and teach the more difficult ones. Somebody always said, eat the frog first, or eat the frog, which meant always do what you maybe the hardest thing first. So it's almost like that, is teaching those VAL teams before we would teach a VAL R gives them more in their toolbox to be successful when they're reading that more complex text. So I hope that helps. Laura, do you want to piggyback off of that at all?
No, I think you answered it really well, Joni. There is no definitive research on exactly the order of the phonetic elements. Ours is solid, and there is support for the order in which we teach the phonetic elements across the grades. And of course, we have a lot of, as I mentioned before, efficacy studies that really show that our system, and it really is a system throughout all tiers and throughout all grades, is effective.
The other question was from Ginger, and this was, would this be recommended for ELLs?
Oh, absolutely. So the routines, the structured literacy approach that we take, that gradual release, everything that is built into the architecture, as Laura likes to call it, the architecture of our programs, was explicitly and strategically built to support all students in the classroom. And one really nice feature we have is we do have support documents on our portal. We have teacher tips within the program that helps teachers to navigate that bridge to supporting EL students, or really all students of language variation in your classroom. So we provide you that support, and we'll continue to provide any kind of support we can also through our training and coaching models as well.
Danielle, do you want to say anything about that? Because I know you work, Danielle is one of our amazing consultants who literally works around the country. And maybe you can comment on the efficacy of our program with, and by the way, we do have research studies with high populations of English learners. Danielle, is there anything you want to add to that from your own experience?
That's exactly what I was going to say, Laura. Like looking at those efficacy studies, one of the things I love about it, Joni mentioned that this is from a third party researcher that did the research. So it wasn't in-house. It wasn't someone that is getting paid by 95 for a salary to tell us how great we are. We had non-biased lens for the research, and that research was able to provide us with a lens of different demographics, ELs, and other places where we have demographics of high poverty, other diversity. But yes, it is been proven, and I work with, as Laura said, across the country in different states that have high EL populations, and then we're using this with Fidelity, and we're seeing phenomenal growth. So yes, it is great for ELs.
And I would say too, that just like any program that you use, if you've got newcomers or students with very limited English, you do have to use your ESL bridging strategies, and that's true with any program. That's really true with this program as well. I will also say that, and one thing I did put in the chat that I think is really important to remember is that as Joni has said, we are aligned across all tiers of instruction. And so if our students are progressing in the core and they need reinforcement or intervention, we have a very specific diagnostic that will help you as a teacher figure out, well, what is that gap that needs to be filled? And then connect you to an intervention resource to help you fill that gap so the students can stay, elevated up to core instruction.
Okay, so when students are older, 3 through 6, would you only use PLL skill 10 and up, or would you use the lower single syllable lessons? This is a great question. We get this all over. And
Yeah.
does the core program begin with single syllable and then introduce multisyllabic words? So
Absolutely. Yes, 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 and yes. So yes, we do recommend third graders on up start beginning in skill 10. The lovely piece about our phonics lesson library is that 0.1, 10.1, 11.1, 12.1 always begins at the single syllable level. And the great thing about the PLL at the older level and also the Phonics Core Program at the older level, we teach the syllable types using nonsense words. So we're evening the playing field for all students. So there's a lot of kids who will get to second and third grade and they may appear to be proficient readers. And the minute that text becomes a little bit more complex and with 2, 3 syllable words, affixes, complex morphemes, kids will start to dip. And the reason for that dip is they never truly had a solid grasp of those 6 syllable types. And what does that mean? What does that pattern mean for that vowel sound? So teaching at a single syllable level using nonsense words, and we're just teaching, we're not practicing using nonsense words at home. We're not drilling and killing with nonsense words. We are strictly using that to teach at that single syllable level until we know students are solid with those 6 syllable types. But that goes for the PLL as well as for grades 3, 4, and 5. And I will get into a slide that shows you that routine here in just a minute. So if I can go ahead and move on, I think we might have a couple answers to some questions in the upcoming slides. So let's continue. I'm really excited to talk about decodable text because, as I've mentioned, decodable text is really that application piece that is most meaningful once you've taught a skill, because we don't want kids just to perform in isolation. We want them to be able to apply that phonics skill, that skill that they've been taught in text. So it's super important. They have multiple opportunities to apply that. And what's really great with the Phonics Core Program is we have decodable passages, 2 per lesson, 1 literary passage and 1 informational passage per lesson. And each lesson is 5 days. So they will be working with 2 passages over that 5 days using that transfer to text routine that I just spoke about. So using decodable text allows them to apply their decoding skill, that whatever that skill is that they're currently learning. And one thing I'm going to say about our passages, and I will soon flip this when I turn to the next slide, but one thing I will say is our passages do not have images that are in the workbook. And the reason for that is we want students to depend on that alphabetic knowledge that they're gaining. We want them to use those great decoding skills and create those decoding habits rather than relying on the pictures. So then, knowing that decodable text is a great option, we want them to be practicing all the time. And a great piece of decodable text will not only help reinforce what they're currently learning, but it will help to practice any previously taught skills. That could be other previously taught phonics patterns. It could be other previously taught high frequency words. That repeated exposure is what's going to build that automaticity and help those kids become proficient, fluent readers. So, and we know, and I had a perfect example of this as a teacher one year. I had a student who, when they started feeling confident that they could read and they started to have that I can attitude when they were reading, they became amazing readers that actually did it for enjoyment. And that's ultimately what we want. We want our kids to read. We want them to enjoy reading. And so giving them those engaging decodable texts that they can feel confident in reading will help to support their continued love of literacy. So I've got a really great thing to share with you. If you haven't seen our new decodable duo book sets, they are amazing. So we had lots of clients come to us and say, gosh, we'd really love pictures with your passages. And of course, our philosophy is we believe in those great decoding habits. And so we want to avoid students using those pictures as their first line of defense to try and decode a word or try to navigate an unknown word. So what we did is we came up with a patent pending format for these decodable duos, and they're flippable. So you've got a text version that has just text. Nice big text so the students aren't struggling to read it. It reinforces the skills that are being taught in the 95% group program. So these are kindergarten, we've made these for kindergarten and first grade, and I'll show that on the next page, how they align to the Phonics Core Program. The non-illustrated side reinforces those alphabetic skills. It progresses systematically and sequentially. That follows the same phonics continuum that I just showed you. We have kept the word count manageable for one sitting. We have limited the high frequency words to the words that they have learned in the Phonics Core Program and have made it very repetitive. So try to avoid including too many irregular pattern words that in one particular book. And of course, the content is very engaging. So once they've used that to practice those decoding skills, maybe with a teacher or with a buddy, they can flip it and then get the joy of reading that same book using those same habits they just did on the text version, but being able to engage with some really amazing pictures that an internal artist of ours had created. And they're colorful and the kids are really going to enjoy them. And again, it's that engagement and that confidence that the kids are going to build through reading these little books that is going to help really promote their love of literacy. So super excited about those decodable duos. Here's a quick in a nutshell about them. So there is a scope and sequence for kindergarten and how the titles align with the lessons. You will see all the way to the left of each of the scope and sequences. Those are the PCP lessons that they align with. So for instance, book 1 aligns with lesson 4 in the PCP. Book 1 in first grade aligns with lesson 2 in first grade. Each set comes with 20 titles, 6 books per title. So that's a total of 120 books per set. And you can see pictures of the sets. They come in a really great box that can sit on your shelf with dividers. They're very sturdy. It's a great addition and companion piece to our Phonics Core program. So we're really excited about those. And you'll get to learn a little bit more about the readables, which are the older kids' version of these books in just a minute. So I'm going to kind of cruise through here because I'd really like for Holly to have a chance to share her experiences. So grades 2 and 3, this is how you can see that progression. Again, you can see the order in which things are taught. And essentially what's happening between grades 2 and 3 is grade 2 is finishing up learning all of those advanced phonemic skills such as predictable vowel teams, unpredictable vowel teams, vowel R, those silent letters like WR, MB, GN, and then any complex consonants that are lingering. Then they will go right into towards the end, towards the last third of second grade, they really start to dive into multisyllable. They do multisyllable at the beginning of the year, but it's mostly with closed syllables, long vowel, silent E. Towards the last third of second grade is when they're going to start to get into multisyllable words with those predictable vowel teams, vowel R. So they're going to go into third grade very prepared and knowledgeable about all the 6 syllable types, because the minute they hit third grade, it is It is multisyllable words, but again, introduced at that single syllable level, nonsense words, moving right into 2 and 3 syllable words, learning about the simple and complex division rules, and then morphology. Morphology takes off in 3rd grade. They get a little dabble of it in 2nd grade with those common affixes. And then moving into 3rd grade is when you start to see some Latin roots coming into play and learning that words have parts that have meaning and how to derive meaning from words, knowing their morphological structures. So this is a quote by Dr. DeHaan, and in a nutshell, it's what it's saying is, as we progress through this presentation, that we know that explicit instruction for those foundational skills should not stop at 3rd grade. It must continue. We know now more than ever that our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders need so much more in word study, learning about the syllable types, learning about the morphological structures of words. They need to use and practice those strategies and routines that I've mentioned up into those intermediate grades so they can be prepared moving into middle school, because we know that they are expected to do so much more independently. So we have to give them the tools to do that. So here's what it is to read the multisyllable words. We have a great 5-step process or routine that we use, and we start teaching this routine in 1st grade using closed syllable words towards the middle to late part of 1st grade. Why not? They know what a closed syllable is. Let's go ahead and put a few words together like picnic and start to hear, they can start to experience that routine. So by the time they get to the latter part of 2nd grade and 3rd grade, they're going to be able to use this routine seamlessly. So first we expect them to find and underline the vowels in a word, draw a line between the syllables. They have to use their knowledge of blends and consonant digraphs to decide what sticks together before they make a division, plus their knowledge of syllable types. So if it's an open syllable, am I dividing before or after that consonant? Then once they've done that, they're going to dissect each syllable. They're going to say the vowel sound, syllable type, vowel sound, read the syllable, do the same for the second, and then read the whole word. So we're really teaching them that the key to that vowel sound is that syllable type identification. So knowing that it's a closed syllable helps them to understand that will be pronounced with its short sound. So as you can see here, this actually happens to be Danielle's daughter's hand on the screen. She should be receiving some kind of kickback for this, but the kids are also taught about hand gestures for the 6 syllable types very early as well. So that's another consistent routine that happens throughout the PCP program. I wanted to show you these readables and basically let you know that they are a series of chapter books that are built especially for 2nd through 5th grade using our same phonics continuum. And there is a teacher's guide that comes with them. They have great photographs that go along with the text to help engage the students. There is, as I said, there is a teacher's guide that goes along with it. So that way it can support your instruction for using this, or you could simply just have the students enjoy the books after you've taught a particular skill. So please have a look. I'll have Barb drop in a link so you can examine these more carefully during your free time to see what the readables are all about that I had that basically shows what's included in our teacher kit and our student kit. So you're going to get everything you need. It's a turnkey program, all the student materials, student workbooks, and the sets of teachers edition. There also is a digital presentation file to guide your instruction and some digital or some classroom visual aids to help support with your instruction.
Thanks, Joni. I'm going to move really quickly through this section because I want to make sure we get to Holly's amazing story of the work in her district. So as you've seen, PCP is kind of unparalleled as a skills and word study program. We also have unparalleled professional learning, including product launches to get you started with the products, professional learning for that deep dive in building your knowledge base, and of course, our crown jewel, which is coaching. So we really consider our professional learning the science of reading and the implementation science in action. So let's go ahead to the next slide, Joni. We are really proud that we own and offer top 10 tools by 95% group, which is our comprehensive, asynchronous, on-demand, easily accessible, comprehensive deep dive into the science of reading. We also offer foundational courses that are professional learning experiences for our teachers. And as I mentioned before, we also offer coaching. And coaching, we know, is critical for ensuring that your implementation goes well. And you're probably familiar with the Joyce and Showers research. And if you look at this and we think about professional development, if we as educators are just presented with theory, we may enhance our knowledge, but very little skill and very little to none transfer to practice. Demonstration, a little bit more bang for our buck. Practice a little bit more, but it's the coaching in which we receive that ongoing support and guidance in the classroom that we see our knowledge and our skills and our transfer to practice really impacted. And this is something that we do all over the country with great results. So with that, just brief overview of professional learning, I want to make sure to now turn this over to Holly Davis Kitson, the principal at Parsons Elementary School in Decatur, Illinois. Holly has worked in education for over 30 years, 10 years as a private daycare director, 12 years as a second grade teacher, and the last 8 years as an administrator. Throughout her career, she has worked specifically with low-income and very diverse populations in military and urban school districts. Literacy and reading have been a lifelong passion for Holly, and she strongly believes that all educators are responsible for ensuring that our scholars are successful and prepared to lead meaningful lives. What a beautiful mission statement. Thank you for sharing your story with us tonight, Holly.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm a little nervous, so hang in there with me, but we do have here at Parsons a really diverse set of scholars. We have about 500 students this year. Our percentages are a little higher, but we run about 60% of our African-American and multi-race students. 28% are white and 12% are Hispanic, and 83% are low income. Here we are an urban school in a small urban district in the center of Illinois. So we could go on to the next one. So as an administrator, I started about 8 years ago as an assistant principal. I moved here to Parsons Elementary, the 2019-2020 school year. And that year, of course, my first year, we closed for COVID. But that year, Parsons also saw a decline in our scholars who were on grade level, and we were labeled as a targeted school that year, which meant that we had 2 subgroups that were not performing as they needed to. So we were starting to look at our data a little bit more. And as we went through COVID, of course, we were virtual for a year. And then as we were coming back out of that, the COVID fog, our building merged with another school here in Decatur. And that school was labeled as comprehensive. That means all of their scholars were underperforming for that year. So we were merging two buildings coming out of COVID with some unique academic challenges. So that first year as we came together, we did have the science of reading training for all staff from both buildings that were coming together. And we decided that year we would run a walked intervention program because we were lacking basic reading skills across the board for our scholars who were coming back out of COVID. And so we did that for a year. And as we started looking at our data that first year, we ran tiered intervention groups. So every student in our building was in an intervention group. Our custodians did intervention groups. Our librarians did intervention groups. I did intervention groups. And so that year, everybody had targeted instruction for at least 30 minutes every day using the phonics lesson libraries or the chip kits for that instruction. Our higher kids did get the vocabulary piece, and they were in vocabulary groups, the vocabulary surge groups. At the end of that school year, our normed assessments said that we were still lacking basic phonemic awareness skills, phonics skills, and vocabulary. So we knew that the tiered interventions were not going to get us out of where we were, and we were not going to be able to help our scholars get where they needed to go. So that year we decided to adopt the 95% core curriculum, which was relatively new at the time. I think it was one of the, it was just starting to come out, and we were getting started with that. That summer, we talked about professional learning. We held 2 sessions through the summer, and my teachers all had access to the phonological processing professional learning. It's all about language, the depth and breadth of phonics, and morphology. So we did a comprehensive PD sessions twice during the summer that year. And then we started with the core curriculum last year. So it was a slow start. And I read in the comments a little while ago that teachers were concerned in other places about that slow start, about the lessons taking longer than 30 minutes. And our teachers had the same concerns when we implemented last year. And what we found out, as the teachers get used to the routines and the students get used to the routines, the lessons get shorter, and they fall into that time frame that you need them to fall into, because we all only have so many minutes during the day. But it is a work in progress, and you just kind of have to keep pushing through it. But one thing I did do with my staff is that it is a lesson every day. We have to do the lesson every day. And some days at the beginning, it cut into some of our other parts of our reading. We had a reading block of about 90 to 120 minutes, which includes our writing as well. But they did get there. And by December, you heard different conversations and different stories about what was happening in their classrooms. So that is kind of how we worked through the program last year. I'm going too fast, probably. Last summer, we also implemented grade level coaching, and just kept pushing. We just kept pushing. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, we can do this, we can get through this. And at the end of the year, we saw some massive growth in our students. And I think there's a slide coming up, and this slide really kind of excites me, because this is fall to fall. So as you can see, when we came into school fall of 2022, those scores, I think we had one grade level, over 20% of our students that were above the 30th percentile, which is our lowest risk benchmark numbers. And this year we're seeing the highest numbers coming in that we've seen in years, and we've had only 1 year of implementation with the core program. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And then I think we could go ahead and move on. Last year our district runs our goals year to year by the middle of the year data. And as you can see, from the 22-23 data to the 23-24 data, we are seeing massive growth that's being sustained in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. We do have a couple of grade levels that they had a fall, but it's also, those are conversations we have with, implementation, and making sure that we are implementing with fidelity, that we are getting through all the steps. So it's exciting to see this growth. And as at the last column is a total for our building overall. So we made, growth as a building as a whole in this process. And it has been really exciting to see and hear our students and teachers, what they can do and what they're capable of doing. We have a couple of favorite quotes. Is that we had a kiddo, and this second grader, and this is from a second grade teacher. And as you know, when we're implementing something new, you have the ones that jump in, and you have the ones that are a slow start, that we might not be able to do this. It's too hard. It's taking too long. This second grader came from a classroom where the teacher was a slow start. She wasn't sure that she was going to get there. And she came to me with the quotes from this student who said at the beginning of the year, I can't read, I can't do this, I can't read. And then in December, she was so excited to come share that he opened up a book, and he's like, just reading it. And he looked at her and said, I can read every word. I'm reading this like I'm not even trying. And that sold her. The teacher then knew the power of what she was doing, even though it was a hard change for her and how we're doing instruction. She knew that that gave her the reason why we were doing what we were doing. So it was exciting to see some of those quotes. And I think I will wrap up by saying that this year we're going to continue the full implementation of 95%. I will say that we are a K-6 building. Last year, we did utilize the 5th grade core curriculum in our 6th grade. And looking at our data this year, those 5th graders still need those supports and that instruction, that targeted instruction. So we are going to continue using the 5th grade core curriculum in our 6th grade. And we are also implementing the 95 RAP program in our special education classrooms to ensure that across the board, we're using the same language. And then we are getting coaching and professional development of how to take our assessments to instruction with the core unit assessments in October. How can we look at those and apply that to our instructional practices? And equity and making sure that every child in my building leaves this school knowing how to learn. We have to know that the most equitable thing that we do is making sure that our kids leave our schools being able to read. It's a passion, it's a desire, and it is a must-do goal for me in my building. So I will open this up to questions. I know I like breeze through. I'm not a public speaker, so thanks for bearing with me.
Holly, you did a tremendous job. It was really informative. And I just really appreciate that statement that you made. That's a beautiful quote. And I think it really just captures your passion for the work that you're doing. So thank you for your story. And last but not least, here's our contact information for myself and Joni, as well as all the account executives. We're going to leave this up here so you can see where your account executive, who your account executive is for your region and their contact information. Also, if you answered the poll that you'd like to be contacted, we'll be reaching out to you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to my colleagues, Danielle and Joni and Barbara. Holly, thank you for your incredible story. We are so appreciative that you could be with us tonight. And thank you to each and every one of you who took time out of your very, very busy day to join us. We thank you for not just tonight, but for the work you do every single day on behalf of your students. We're grateful, and we are grateful to partner with you. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night.